Namaste, my good friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and I help people navigate through their spiritual awakening process. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 tips that have actually worked for me in my own life that will help you have more self-control. My YouTube channel is primarily about the spiritual awakening or the Ascension process, but I mention my life oftentimes in my videos, and one of the things I mention from time to time is the fact that I used to be an addict. I overcame a heroin addiction a long time ago. I was like 19 years old when I got clean. I'm 32 now, so it's been a while. I've clearly overcome it. And a lot of my viewers, I know, struggle with self-control. The awakening can really make you feel very out of sorts and act out of your normal behavior, out of character for yourself, and a lot of times we just feel really unbalanced, and like there's a million things we want to do, but we don't have the discipline and self-control to actually do that. We feel stuck. So these tips, again, these are things I've learned along the way. I'm going to share them with you, and hopefully it'll help you in this regard. Tip number 1 is to start building habits that aren't that challenging to take on, as a way to build your own self-confidence and your ability to sort of implement your game plan and take control of your life. So maybe when I was a personal trainer, I would get this all the time. It'd be people way out of shape, probably haven't exercised in some of them like up to a decade or even never before in their life. And they'd come up to me and say, "Man, Vic, I want to run a marathon, man. What do I do?" And I just know from experience that is, I always encourage everyone to dream big, but that might be unrealistic at their stage. So think smaller. Say, maybe I'll wake up 10 minutes earlier. And then do that for like a month. Start small, and then you're going to, if you start with something so huge and then you fail at that, not that it can't be in theory pulled off, it's just less likely. We're kind of a mess, us human beings. But if you can start training yourself and just proving to yourself that you have what it takes to implement and establish an empowering type of habit, then you can slowly start chipping away at these little habits you pick up and integrate, and then before you know it, you have what it takes to take on the big goals, the big dreams, and really, in the process, cultivate a high level of self-control. Number 2 is to go to the source, go to and actually program your subconscious mind to help you out in this regard. There's a book I read that's awesome. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz or something. And he called your subconscious mind the servo mechanism. And it's like whatever you feed it, whatever you put into your servo mechanism, whatever you tell yourself, self-dialogue, tell yourself what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, it will, at an unconscious level, it will help you in a fairly mysterious way. Some people call it the law of attraction. It doesn't matter. It works. And a way to do this, a practical way to actually do this, is to write out yourself a to-do list the night before. A lot of highly successful, influential, billionaire, really high-level people, a lot of them do this. I've studied books about these people, and this is one of the things almost all of them do. Almost all of them have a notebook and a to-do list. Many of them write it at night. Most of them don't know why it works. I don't claim to know. I suspect it's what I just said. I suspect it helps your goals marinate overnight, and then you're more likely to be able to implement them. Just having it written down. There's a 44%, one study I read said you have a 44% higher chance of accomplishing whatever goal you set out for yourself if you just write it down. Give it a try. It works for me. Number 3 is work on your biggest weakness. This is sort of contradictory to number 1. You take whatever is relevant to you at this time. But it reminds me of this book called The One Thing. The One Thing says you wake up every morning and you ask yourself, what is the one thing I can do that will have the greatest impact on my life? Well, a lot of people's one thing when it comes to having self-control is addressing their biggest weakness. Because if you can tackle that hurdle, then all the other ones will sort of pale in comparison. This is the exact opposite advice of number 1 as I verbalize it. But again, it all applies depending on the context. Now it's up to you to be sort of discerning and apply whatever resonates with you, basically. But these are just tips I have used along the way. One of my biggest hurdles was my addiction. when I was a junkie, I couldn't do anything. I had things I wanted to do in life, and I could not do any of them. I had zero self-control. I was so out of control, I'm embarrassed to even tell you, go any further into this. But once I conquered that addiction, that has stuck with me my entire life. I know that I can set my mind to almost anything and accomplish that. And I've carried that sort of confidence and just determined willpower in many of the things I've done in my life, and it's helped me by tackling my one thing. So what's your one thing? Number 4, this comes from a book I just read like last week. It's so awesome, man. In fact, I recommend the audiobook because the author narrates it, and she's a real cool lady. Kind of like me. If you're like me, she's kind of like, she swears sometimes. She's kind of like a down-to-earth lady. Real cool. It's called the 5-second rule. This lady had a real trouble getting out of bed every morning, and that was sort of her one thing. It screwed up her whole day, and she just, for the life of her, could not get up. And then, I'm not going to get into the whole backstory, but she saw something on TV that sort of inspired her to try counting backwards from 5 to 1 and then blasting off. She saw a rocket launching on TV, and it kind of sparked something in her. So the next morning, her alarm went off, as it always does, but rather than hit the snooze button or drift off back to sleep, she counted down in her head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and blast off. She got herself out of bed. The reason that works is because anytime you really want to do something, when it comes time to put your money where your mouth is and actually take action on the things you might be saying you want to do, within a few seconds, within 5 seconds, according to this woman, you start to immediately talk yourself out of it. It's not the right time. I don't know about today. I have a lot on my plate. Maybe next month. And then it takes on momentum, and eventually you don't do anything. So next time you want to do something, you want to break a habit or start a new habit, count backwards from 5 and just freaking do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Number 5 is drop the perfectionism. I think a lot of us are perfectionists by nature because we want to uphold our illusion of perfection, that we're afraid to admit to ourselves of our shortcomings. But the reality is, most people, the vast majority of people, including me, especially me, are a mess, have a lot of issues, a lot of problems. So when we try to exude and demonstrate willpower, don't have an all or nothing attitude, because what happens there is then we set ourselves up for failure by being unrealistic, and then all the guilt and the self-judgment comes up, and that's really the big barrier, where it's such an unpleasant feeling to feel that way, and we associate that by trying, and so we become afraid to try. But if you can just say, you know what, man, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna do my best, and you know what, today I might have a good day, I might not, it's going to fluctuate. Some days you're gonna like do whatever you really want to do and have that connection between what you want to do and your action be like effortless, and it's gonna go smoothly. Other times you're gonna just really be a mess, especially going through the spiritual awakening, and you're not gonna do anything productive. You probably will revert to old bad habits and think, why am I doing this? I'm such a freaking mess. Let it all be. Accept it. It's okay. The way we have access now to see a lot of little snippets into like successful people's lives, it can give the false perception that they have this like awesome, perfect life. But the reality is they're a mess too. They're really successful people, the ones who seem to have a lot of self-control and do big things in life. They've learned how to leverage and sort of maximize their 1 or 2 awesome talents, but they struggle elsewhere. Number 6, find what many people like to call a purpose. Find something greater than yourself to work towards that can leave some sort of legacy. Because when you have something that's bigger than yourself, bigger than your personality, bigger than your fluctuating emotions and waves of insecurity and self-doubt and lack of self-control, if something is obligating you that you're invested in, it will help pull you towards it and sort of take the edge off of all the other stuff. But if you have really nothing to live for, then there's really no drive. You got to find a reason to have drive. Find something to drive towards, and you will find that all these the human experience takes a whole you'll experience it in a completely different way. It takes the edge off of all problems when you have something greater than yourself to live for. So find that, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be something that's perceived as wow, look at this person. It could be something small in the grand scheme of things, but something that fills you with passion and drive. And if you don't know what that is, many don't, find it. Make that your next thing. Your number one thing is to find that. And you'll be amazed at how much self-development goes down when you start working towards something like that. Number 7, I'm going to label it train your brain, because we have so many self-limiting beliefs, so much dogma, so much crap instilled in us that really we're in a way conditioned to have no self-control, to not live our lives on our own actual authentic terms. So what I do is a personal tip. What I do is when I'm struggling with something in particular, I try to read books about it, to really not just like a simple video like this is good, it's a good start, but I will try to program my mind to start thinking differently about this. And I'll give you an example. When I started my YouTube channel, I had a lot of compulsions to always check the stats. How many subscribers do you have? How many comments? How many likes? Ooh, what are people saying? You know, and it was like this compulsion, but it was causing me to not be able to really focus. It was making me very flighty, and or I would get distracted very easily. Lack of self-control, very compulsively doing it basically. So I read this book called Deep Work, and it just talks about like how necessary it is to be able to unplug, because we're living in an age where few people unplug. Most people are very scattered, but the ones who can unplug themselves and do what he calls deep work, where you invest yourselves with no distraction from several hours at a time, you can really tap in and really get that depth of your being into whatever you're doing. Anyway, that was my struggle, but I didn't just say I'd like to stop doing this. I really took a lot of action on many different levels, many of the things I've shared, but especially this, programming my mind. So anyways, guys, this is a constant struggle for me, a constant pursuit. It's an ongoing process. I've gotten a lot better. I'm not perfect. I'm still nutty and compulsive big time, but I'm far less compulsive than I used to be. I have a lot more self-control, and I do every single thing I just shared with you, and it is my sincere hope that it will help you on your own journey. So with that, I will close. Have an amazing day. Thank you guys for everything. Namaste.